this part of the course, we are going to move our player and our tree into a newly created terrain. We are going to update our scripts to make the game more scalable. And finally, we are going to spawn a wooden log whenever we chop down a tree. So before we start thinking about instantiating any loot from the tree, the first thing we're going to do is delete our ground and our cubes. And then we're going to take our player capsule, our player follow camera, and our tree, and we are going to move that into our newly created terrain. I am just going to place my player and my tree right around here. Doesn't really matter where you place it on the terrain, as long as you make sure that you don't go through the ground. So just to check that, go to the game and hit play, just to make sure that you can walk around in your terrain. And as you can see, we can still chop down our tree, but we needed to be instantiating some loot, or more specifically, make it drop a log when we chop it down, which we can then collect. I will use this log I found on poly.pizza. This is a place for free low poly assets. And as you can see, you can spin the log around, zoom in on it, zoom out, and you can go here and click download the FBX file, not the GLB, but the FBX. You can see that the model is public domain, meaning you can use it personal or commercial without attributing the creator. But it's always a nice idea to shout out creators who provide free assets for game developers and really improving the game development community. So shout out Collegic Dev, check out their profile for these two cool assets. You can then take the FBX file from a zip folder and simply drag it into the assets folder. You can expand this to check out the materials and the mesh, or you can just take this object and drag directly into your scene. This might be a bit too big compared to the tree, so I will create a new folder called prefabs. I will then drag the log from the hierarchy into the prefabs folder, and I will double click it to open up the prefab editor. Then I will set down the scale a bit. Let's try something like 0.5. Yeah, that looks a bit better. And now we can start writing our scripts for spawning this prefab when chopping down our tree. Currently, to chop down our tree, we are using our tree health script. And it would make sense to just spawn the prefab right around here when we destroy our tree game object. But later on in this course, when we expand to other resource types like stone, then it would be nice to have a script which is more scalable. And tree health connected to specifically the tree resource isn't really that scalable name-wise. Therefore, I'm going to go back into the Unity editor and I'm going to create a new script. And this script will be used for all our current and our future resources. And I will simply name it resource node. In our resource node script, first thing we will need is a serialized build, and this will be our loot prefab, so our wooden log. So I will create a private game object called loot prefab. You can also call it resource drop or whatever. This just represents whatever the resource will drop when you destroy it. Then later on, we would like to be able to change our resources depending on whether they are wood, stone, whatever you might collect in the game. So for this, we will create an enum, public enum resource type, and then curly brackets. And for now, we will just do wood. For those who don't know what an enum is, it is short for enumeration, and in C# is a way to name a list of options. So it gives readable names to simple numbers, so our code will be much easier to read and manage. For instance, in this game, instead of tracking resource types using numbers like 0 for wood, 1 for stone, whatever, we can just create a list of exact options, so that we later have a chance on expanding on it just by putting in a comma and a new resource type. Then for further specifying the type later on in this course, we will also create a public resource type called node type. So which type of node, whether it's stone or wood. Then just as before from the tree health script, we will create a private int health, and we will set this to 3. Then we can actually go to our tree health script and copy our take damage method, paste it into this script. We will just change this to health instead of current health. And we can do a bit more specific debugging here to just make sure our type system works. So instead of just logging the health, we would like to log our node type. So which type of node we're currently farming. And we would still like the health. So I will add plus hit to make sure we hit it. And I will also like to log the remaining health of the resource. So I will type health remaining plus health. So now we are logging which type of node we're hitting. We make sure that we actually hit it, and we check its remaining health. This node type may seem a bit excessive, but later on in the course, when we add stone, we can use this node type to make sure that we can't mine stone using an axe, and we can't chop down trees using a pickaxe. And right now we are just destroying the game object, but we also like to instantiate our loot around here. So it would actually make sense to create a specific method for this, as we are expanding this part a bit. So I will create a private void method called break node. First, we need to check if we actually have assigned our loot prefab in the inspector. So if loot prefab is not equal to null, then we can use the instantiate method to instantiate our loot prefab. Firstly, this method needs to specify what do we want to instantiate. Well, we want to instantiate our loot prefab. Where do we want to instantiate it? Well, we want to instantiate it at the transform.position of this game object, so where the tree currently is. And do we want any rotation on it? If you want, you can add a rotation to make it look more like an arcade pickup, but I would like it to just stay where it is. So I will use the quaternion.identity to keep the original rotation of the parent game object, which is our tree. So this means no rotation at all. When the loop prefab has been instantiated, we can then go ahead and destroy our game object, which in this case is the tree, because the script is on the tree. And of course, before we exit the script, we also need to be calling our break node method. So replace this destroy game object line with break node, save the script. We will then go to our tree game object. We do not need the tree health script anymore, so we will remove this component and instead add our resource node. The last thing we need is to add the loop prefab, and then we need to assign our log prefab here into the loop prefab property. And now in theory, we should be ready to go and chop down this tree and instantiate our loop prefab, but we will get an error when we try to do it. I recommend pausing the video and giving it a quick think to which error we could possibly get. But for now, I will go ahead and chop down the tree. But as you can see, nothing is happening. We are getting no logging in our console window, and the tree does not disappear. So your next challenge in this course is find out why the tree is not taking damage or disappearing. If you would like a hint, you might want to look in our swing script. Pause the video now, give it a good go, and come back to this video when you fix the problem. Okay, welcome back. If we go to our assets and our scripts folder and then open up our swing script, you can see here in the check hit method we use to actually make the tree take damage, we reference our tree health script, which we do not use anymore. Therefore, instead we need to actually reference our resource node script. So instead of the tree health tree, we will just replace this resource node, and if the node is not equal to 0, then the node can use its take damage method. And of course, in this line, we also need to specify that we are no longer using the tree health script, but now we are using the resource node. Save the script, and now when we chop down our tree, our log prefab will spawn. But for now, we've successfully placed our player and our tree in our newly created terrain. And in the next part of this course, we will learn how to pick up this collectible. Until then, thank you for watching, subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next one.